today's celebration is little bit not in aligned with the World International Indigenous Day celebration, whose theme is honoring indigenous midwife, safeguard life and well-being is the International Indigenous Day celebration in this year. But this very honoring, which I would like to uh, align with our own Meitei indigenous practice of Maibi, Chabupi as a Maibi, so to honor these midwives, what we call the Chabupi Maibis in Manipur. And this secure legacy is embodied in the figure of Maibis at Chabupi, and their guidance on healthcare as on the expecting mothers and postnatal care is an example of indigenous people as protector of indigenous culture, identity, and indigenous land. Aduna akoina Manipurda mana akoigi inau khombana yam marik chumna haibigre. We should keep a distinct difference between the indigenous people, the native people, and the bona fide citizen of the state. Delhi da handakna ahumlak suba oina akoina indigenous day se pangthok chabani. Pangthok chagibagi maram su akoina laibak thiriba 3rd May gi mani dagi hokiba Manipur gi crisis asida akoina sum crisis se Henjel Lappa, I believe when the crisis become deepening and when we try to understand what exactly happened, Masida Akwina Yamna Marik Chumna Uba Pangi, Mahariba crisis ase, Lan ase, indigenous people da Akwigi Lan Haurapa. Globally, Yenagasu, Pitibi da Hoji, Lan Macha Akwina Mapam Kanga Bakayada, Lan Chatari Base, Akwina Handa, Akwish I Isama. Subject matter की expert नच्चा दे अदुगा indigenous की यामने important सु खंजर मन नच्चा दे अदुबु मैतै अमा ओइना मणिपुरी मैतै बु नुक्सिजबा अमसुंग मणिपुरदा लैरिबा indigenous communities खुदिंगमक बु नुक्सिजबदगी लान असिदा थोकजरप लान असिगी मतुंगदगी थोकजरपदगी अखोइना ताजरुबा पाजरुबा खंजरुबा खरदगी. It's very important to safeguard the indigenous people. It is an attack to the indigenous people of the community. Aduga sum tajaruba aduga experts singi panel da tajaruba masung pajaruba da pitribi da to ibat macha lan ase yengjaruba matamda pitribi da laiba mafam khuding makta indigenous peoples ki mathakta landa boina uba aduga ubada natana oiramba aduga reason di Majugi akoigi mineral resources ki matung gi akoigi masida akoigi industrialist oirabasu amasung colonization ki oirabasu indigenous ki mi sing asida landara aga moibu namthabiraga the identity of the indigenous people, the culture of the indigenous people makoibu tawkat handraga makoibu panghallaga moibu lairik laisugi kaino se panghandraga Moise, atom chakotana leiraga colonization gi yamna strong countries mayam singsina moibu laksan ba urappa sugumba gi maram se handaki Manipur gi lan asi chu achauba khudam amane haiba se akoina khangba ngamai amasung masi achumba oiga dawribani. But mapam khodimakta indigenous ki globally face tawriba se mineral resource aduga akoi Manipur gi se Manipur da akoi gi maitai da atamnana karigi da makta landari ino haibada Manipuri ma koi gi indigenous people gi mapam khodi makta land protectors se indigenous people na oyeba indigenous people haibas mi singsina indigenous oriba mi singsina mapam du da lairiba akoi gi ecology aduga land aduga moi gi culture identities language moisina responsible or protect the that means the indigenous people are closely emotionally attached to the land aduna moigi land grabbing or iba colonization gi kanosina land grabbing or iba indigenous people bu namthana na bo hona na pachida ai khoi gi Manipur gi yengra kanda maitai haibasina community indigenous people like minariba community khuding maki mapi mapa oiraga masigi mayokta adum laeba masya ꯍꯧꯖ ꯀꯌꯥꯗ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯗ ꯂꯥꯟꯗꯥꯔꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯕꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯈꯪꯗꯕ ꯂꯥꯟꯗꯥꯔꯛꯏꯕ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯅꯦꯆꯔꯦꯜ ꯔꯤꯁꯣꯔꯁꯀ ꯃꯔꯤ ꯂꯩꯅꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯈꯪꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯂꯥꯟꯗꯥꯔꯛꯄꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯥꯌꯣꯡ ꯌꯥꯈꯤꯕꯁꯦ ꯃꯩꯇꯩꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯛꯈꯤꯕ being the brother elder brother of all the communities aduna maitai haibase nandhaba yararoi haibase khangeba maitai nongsa haina masigi koi marik chumba example di hoji ai speech ki mamang da pibikriba funaba martial art manipur ki martial art se akoi ki indigenous martial art culture akoi ki identity neba aduna adugi moina hoji perform tawgibado yamna laiba natteba practice tawragasu aina ngasidagi aina practice tawrage hairaga aina hekta ngamgadaba natteba masida resilience tangeba concentration changeba mind concentration aduga isada yamna resilience laiba ma changeba this is the quality of the Meitei people aduna hiram khuding maktagi landara agasu manipur bu mutna na bahonaragasu akoi Meitei di laigani haibase akoi Meitei da attack manipur de attack tawrapa khuding makta khongjom lan bu oirabasu aduga British na oirabasu akoi se mokhoi ga landheng na ba ngammaroi khangasu akoi di manipur di akoi Meitei di akoi manipur kanani haidana thawai thagi ba mayam ama akoi gi sister mayam ama akoi gi mangda ubiri base adugumadana handaki lan asidasu akoi gi icha inau mayam ama thawai na pontha oikiba len se akoi gi lam se mapandagi lakpa moi kharana akoi gi len se grabbing tawgiba lawshangiba suknam sapsanga lawraga moina phattaba thabak tawba illegal immigrants mayam sina poppy cultivation adugi cultivation asida moida akoi gi lam adubu manghalamba natana manipur gi adu phajaraba akoi gi natural akoi gi ecological aduga natural kaino do manghalaganda hairiba pot ase thabada moina seasonariba har nungduna aduki mate urea se changeba poppy cultivation sida aduga chingda thabaneba pop adugi urea seasonabagi aduga chemical pesticide mayam seasonabagi moigi mahi sina tamda tara aga tamda lairiba khoigi phajaraba turen pat punamak se manghallalaga adudagi kaino nga adugi nga do khoina chadoini adugi ising do khoina taktoini tapna China gi opium war da tapna naron mangan giba adumaina handaki lan asisu mamang da khoina kita khara community ani gi hatna senaba adu ubagi wani they try to kill us very slowly from every angle masi akhoi myam na gyan taminaba ama changni haiba aduna manipur kan ba haibase akhoi khattagi Meitei khattagi natte at this critical juncture manipur da laiminari ba community khudimak indigenous community khudimak ki mathau ne manipur imana thank you so much
Thank you for those meaningful words. As we move on, we now have a video message from Ms. Bina Lakshmi Netam, Indian humanitarian, author, and female activist for the advocacy of gender rights and women-led disarmament movements with the objective of arresting gun culture and bringing about peace of Manipur and Northeast India. We request everyone to direct their attention to the screen as we hear the message.
There are an estimated 476 million indigenous people living in 90 countries and territories. They represent around 6% of the world's population and belong to as many as 5,000 different cultures. The indigenous peoples movement is one of the most robust social movements ever seen in our recent global history. What did the indigenous peoples did to get the world to recognize them is a story of an exceptional nature. In the 1970s, indigenous peoples from around the world began to approach the United Nations as a site where they could pursue their quest for their rights, their recognition, and their self-determination. The story of how and what the indigenous peoples won, especially the unique rights of participation at the United Nations, deserves to be seen as a critical milestone in the history of the making of the new world. Indigenous peoples have knocked at the door of international institutions several times. As early as 1923, Cayuga Chief Descahe, representing the Six Nations of the Iroquois, also known as the Haudenosaunee, traveled to Geneva to the then League of Nations to plead for the cause of his people. A similar journey was made by Maori leader W.T. Ratana in protest against the breaking up of the 1820 Treaty of Waitangi and the loss of Maori control of their lands. A new indigenous peoples diplomacy thus took roots, leading on them onto a global stage, in the process making an indelible mark in the protecting of rights and recognitions of indigenous peoples and indigenous nations from around the world and their inalienable rights to self-determination. The right to self-determination has been a cornerstone of indigenous peoples' demand, and its recognition is indeed a true historical landmark. Indigenous peoples had to struggle to be recognized as peoples, and this is now a reality. Self-determination for indigenous peoples means a nexus of several rights. The right to self-identify as indigenous and to decide who their members are. The right to have institutions which preserve the distinctness of indigenous peoples' ways of lives. Self-determination also means the right to free, prior, and informed consent in crucial areas. Not everyone understands that human rights are dynamic and evolving. One of the biggest changes the indigenous movement have was the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in the year 2007. These came after 25 long years of mobilization by indigenous people and negotiation with member states. Indigenous people's remarkable persistence and advocacy also gave birth to the Convention number 169 of the International Labour Organization, as well as the Regional American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People not only recognizes individual rights, but also group rights, such as the right to land and the right to choose their own modes of development, governance, education, and modes of medical treatment, etc. Together with the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the victories of global indigenous peoples movement also have included the following. First, the creation of the UN Working Group on Indigenous Populations, the creation of the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the creation of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, the creation of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and the International Decade of Indigenous Languages.
Ari nyau bamunda nyau baguna china shakita mikau sukunganchi nya kipano minya ashtang jiksi shakatisha chi hatun shakta gunabu ji marisha katiki minu kuchikta ganya jiksi guna
years ago, in 77. It was a delegation of leaders that were fighting for their recognition as nations. Because we couldn't find any justice in the lands that we read, we said, well, and it was a revelation to many people around the world that indigenous people were still here.
We usually say we came to the UN first because we were not able to solve our problems in our countries. The second is because we understand that at the international level, the governments are setting standards, and we need our voice to be heard at those levels. But we know we also need that those standards that are being defined includes indigenous people's rights and indigenous people's perspective.
Well, for us, it's very unique in a way because it was very specifically focused on treaty. Our elders and our spiritual leaders at home had been very, very concerned about violations of Treaty Number 6, our treaty, by our treaty partners. And they said to me, well, to us, that we have to go back to the international arena.
This movement and promotion of the rights of indigenous peoples.
Today, the greatest challenge stems from climate crisis, environmental violence, and wars over indigenous lands and territories. Located in ancestral sites in sensitive biodiversity regions of the world, indigenous peoples' movement and their wisdom will lead the way, informed by history. It is all about taking the wisdom of the past to inform the present and self-determine the future. The efforts for healing peoples, for peace and the planet will thus continue by the bravery, the courage of indigenous peoples' movement.
Thank you, ma'am. Up next, we have an amazing song performance by Huidong Tuitoy de Chenu. The stage is all yours.
Hello, hello. Yeah. We can start now. Lam dam tam kaya punta ki imagi ng kay kanbada kanduna wari sinduna tauna piri tanggal uri nasa ay ko'y ngasisu misery ay sunafang lagi na sana mentagi magi urap ka na kung lang laman sinjagay oh Pagmamdana pagpamabog asimadya ni ay ko'y pungama iyang hiri tanabagong asipa mapagkalit-kalit koting unang gabaoy sagi malim imagi mafamdamot manalatsagi oh imamanipo oh imamanipo Ima nung shibi ima
Thank you so much, Toy Toy Bihu Jong Chenu. That was such a graceful performance. Next up, culture is not only preserved through words and traditions, but also through art, music, and movement. Our next presentation is a beautiful expression of our cultural heritage through dance. Please join me in warmly welcoming the Maharani Bagh group for a traditional dance performance.
That was such a beautiful performance. Up next, we may now invite Professor R.K. Brojan, Professor and Dean of the School of Computational and Integrative Sciences, to share his thoughts and address the gathering. We welcome you, sir.
I apologize for the inconvenience. There has been some slight changes in the schedule. Next up, we have Anshala Pralapa. Music speaks directly to the heart. It carries our stories, emotions, memories, and traditions from one generation to the next. It is now our pleasure to welcome Ms. Anshala Purailatvam for a special musical performance. Please take your time.
배터리 야오리고 회제 탁대 있잖아 그래 그래서 레포로 지나 스톱 떨어가 스톱 떨어 많이 떨어
Check.
full